On this episode, we're going to be talking about choosing manufacturers and vendors. I'm John,
I'm Amanda
and we are the Hardscape Nerds
by Hardscapes.
because we scape so hard.
All right.
We did it backwards.
We did do it
I
backwards.
don't like it that
We're
way.
gonna mix it up.
I guess.
So this is something that's primarily on me with sales and estimation, that materials are I used to get really overwhelmed by all the material choices. And locally we have RI Lampus, and your dad used to use them. He built retaining walls. So is that primarily why you started with them?
The vendor that we used, as far as I know, they only sold Lampus.
Okay.
So they didn't actually offer Unilock. It wasn't until much later that I even realized Unilock was a thing. So probably several years into building walls that I even realized that there was other manufacturers that were of good quality.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. And locally, at least, when it's just like Kleenex being used interchangeably with the word tissue, Versalock is used interchangeably with wall block a lot of times, at least in my experience.
yeah,
So we had Lampus and relied heavily on them, and then I would encounter reps from other companies, and I would say the other two big ones, well, the other big one would be Unilock. And Techo Block you can kind of get, but it's not as easily to come by. And I would look at these catalogs and I would just get really overwhelmed with all of the options, because all the colors, the shapes, the sizes for block and pavers. And I couldn't wrap my head around all of them. And it took a while before I realized that those manufacturers, and then later in our market, EP Henry started making a presence. Oberfields, depending on especially how far south or east you go. Some people know their stuff. And then Cambridge, a vendor up north contacted me, and they have a lot of Cambridge stuff. But it seems like every time I look at a catalog now, I see the same things over and over again. And there might be one or two unique offerings that company has. And I would say, with the exception of Techo Block, that they have a lot of focus on modern and something that's a little more out of the box or out of the ordinary that they'll offer. But by and large, you have your Hollands, your 4x8 brick looking pavers. You have the 3-piece sets. So the large rectangle, small rectangle, square in between.
when we started switching over, because everything we did was Lampus, and they have the 3-piece set. It's called Grandview, and in the field, once we switched over to Beacon Hill as our primary installation, our standard paver to go with, for me it was pretty difficult because I was used to the patterns. They're similar, but the dimensions weren't the same.
There's a slight tweak.
Well, they have different quantities of each one, so the patterns.
The ratio.
Yeah, the ratio is different, and the pattern is similar, but it's not the same. So that, like, Angelo can lay faster, our worker, he can lay Beacon Hill way faster than I can because he's not been bogged down with the other
He
stuff.
didn't, yeah.
And when it comes to Grandview, to me I've done so much of it that comes a lot easier to me because I can visualize the patterns when you do use a repeating pattern, which we tend to do. We have recently started offering like random, but for the most part it's been like here's the pattern options that they have, and this is we used to have them pick one, and then we just started saying like this is going to be the easiest for no cuts, and we just tell them that this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, and most of the time I don't think anyone really has a preference.
Yeah, the one issue you get into is when you have the design software and that has a pattern that's set up in it, and so you have to pay attention to that. If you're sending a design, and you really, really have to tell prospects, clients that this is not a true like rendering of a blueprint of the job. This is
an
not
architectural drawing.
Yeah, so this is not 100% accurate because people will start referencing that drawing a lot. So it helps us a lot in the field, but it also causes some headaches because the homeowners will say, well, I thought it was supposed to be over here like 6 inches.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's
like the seam of however the pattern shook out.
That's not reality. We never planned on doing that, and so that's something to watch out for. So and as far as the Holland and there's definitely a difference. We've become big fans of Unilock. Like there's a difference in quality to different manufacturers. So kind of if you're new to this, check out stuff. Talk to your local places, and look at them. So we've had a lot less trouble with Unilock than we have some of the other stuff. So we've become fans of them, became authorized contractors in the process, but it just we don't agree to like sell their stuff because I do get a free shirt, but but it's I got free shirts from the other stuff too. But it's really nice stuff. So
it is.
It's So that matters too, quality. Because if you're having to set aside a half a pallet because there's just bad stuff in it frequently.
Had bad mixes, like the surface quality from one pallet to another, the tightness of the mix.
During the lockdowns and pandemic stuff, everyone was kind of rushing stuff through. So there was some quality control with everything, but to me, Unilock held pretty true. I would still, I would definitely pick that as far as...
We didn't have to set a lot of stuff aside.
Yeah.
Like order that much more extra and then pick through the stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And we've even had trouble with block, the job we're on now, the color they chose. In the past, we had problems with that, and the problems have been addressed. They were made in a whole different facility.
What color are we using?
Sandstone.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's something else too. The colors, not everything might be made in the same place. They might have different standards, so you might end up getting corner pieces that are completely different than the rest of the colors, and you run into problems with that. So that's something to pay attention to.
We really don't have Lampus, all their stuff's local, and they are they have the specs for Versalook. They can make it. We don't really have any experience of other manufacturers of Versalock to have any kind of comparison, but you do have to watch with materials and talking to your homeowners that when you pick the colors, they're available in your region. So I've had somebody bring me Versalock stuff from the Midwest. I don't even know what manufacturer, and the colors aren't the same. Even amongst Unilock's offerings, it's out of Ohio for us, the colors.
Yeah, I would say also you want to make sure the customer, you have it written in your contract that the customer initials what color they pick it. And it should say in there that if they dislike the color once it's on site, they have to pay to ship it out and swap it out. Your vendor might be super cool and just say, okay, we'll eat the cost of this, but realistically that shouldn't be on them either. So it's up to the clients to determine this. You can't get in a situation where I really don't like that. That's a little bit more tan than I thought. Well, we can switch it out, but you just have to pay the fee for the delivery, and you might have to wait or whatever. So and then once you bring that up, then a lot of times it's like, you know what, it's not that bad.
Yeah, money.
So yeah,
makes decisions a lot of times.
For sure.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, every material, like we're gonna do a Beacon Hill. It's gonna be granite fusion, and then we're going to use copthorn basalt. Well, each individual color that they choose, like there's a place, and I put, if it's a husband and wife, both of them need to sign. If it's just a single person and they're the only decision maker, then there's one signature. But make everybody pay attention to that.
And I would add too to all that, there's nothing wrong with just mixing manufacturers. If you have a vendor that sells multiple, most of them do. It's been my experience that most of them do sell more than one. It's usually at least two different types of block or pavers. There's nothing wrong with the clients want certain style or certain color. Just you can be creative with this stuff. There's no end to the possibilities for what we can do. You might have to watch out for warranty information. That could provide a gray area or something, but they should still stand behind their product. So.
I don't think there's anything, that would be affected. If there's other materials on the job. I think the only instance I've seen. No, not even. I'd say with like financing. You have to have at least that company's product somewhere on the job, but it doesn't have to be exclusive.
Yeah. So,
but sometimes, especially with the blacks, the color, the pigment, the dark one, solid black pavers. People sometimes have the impression that it's going to be this deep black, like high contrast, and when they see them, depending on what manufacturer, sometimes it's just not as deep, as a dark of a color, as much of a contrast as they thought.
It depends on the manufacturer, though, because we Blockhouse, it's a very, very small manufacturer that's very local to us. Their stuff's really, really dark.
Yeah.
So
it's just the pigmentation that they choose.
They definitely do something different. They make like kind of a little bit higher end steps and retaining wall block, and just a whole nother offering that really no one else makes. So it's nice to have options to present. So.
Yeah, because sometimes there's some companies that will have a lot of options in terms of styles, but there are color limitations to that particular paver, and you don't have as many options, and so it is nice to be able to switch.
We've run into that with Unilock, where unfortunately their walls, they don't come in enough colors.
The Pisa
XL, which is pretty popular. It's not popular enough around here, in my opinion. It's a gorgeous block, but it's
so crisp. Yeah.
It's the problem is there's just not enough colors. In my opinion, there's not enough color choices to really compete. So it's kind of limited if you're trying to do a wall and a driveway out of pavers. It's a little bit tougher of a sell.
Yeah, because that particular example, there are 3 color options in our market.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get into Versalock, I want to say there are at least 8 colors.
Yeah.
So that kind of, people like the Pisa, but sometimes it'll sway a decision.
It has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to look at the pavers, especially, are very interchangeable because you only have, most of them are 60 millimeter. You get 70 millimeter. So sometimes, if you want to make it a little easier on yourself, steer them to have pavers that are going to be, the border and the field are going to be the same height. It's not a huge deal. But then you also have the 80 millimeters if you're doing a driveway. So if they want a driveway, you have to watch your thicknesses and what's applicable for that specific project. When it comes to wall block, I feel like there's more of a discrepancy because you have certain things like certain wall block you could take up to 3 or 4 feet and not need to reinforce, and they're more structural. And then you have others that you can only go up to 2 feet, and then you kind of just are stuck there. Or if you want to go higher, you need to have reinforcement. So that can make a difference in the cost and kind of what people are willing to go with. Where we failed is that not showing those options and working that price out in advance to kind of let people know, okay, if it's only $1,000 difference, depending on the project, let's go for it to get something different than everybody else. So there's bigger discrepancies with the block, the walls, I believe, than the pavers, but I mean, everything really installs in a pretty similar fashion.
Similar, but when it does come to paver dimensions, are pretty uniform across the board, like you were saying. But the wall block, you get into Unilock, and as far as I know, Teco, but definitely Unilock. When they call it a 16-inch block, it's really not. It's like 15 3/4. So when
they're working off of metric,
exactly,
primarily.
So that's the problem we've run into, and because we try and lay out and split our bond lines and try and lay out the beginning of the wall so that we have minimal cuts, and it's a lot harder to do, especially you have to know that. You have to know your batter. If you're doing a large, we've done large engineered wall where the top of the wall met the steps and it had to meet perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're going up, it's probably about 10 foot tall by the time you got to the very top. So when you're doing that, you have to know how far the setbacks are, and each wall block is slightly different. They might call it 3/4 of an inch, and it's really 5/8. So you have to maybe get a few of them and just do a little bit of a mock-up to see what the reality is. And different manufacturers have different specs to them. And occasionally you can get a different batch where just one particular batch is a little bit different. So it's just stuff you have to pay attention to when you start getting to more advanced jobs, where stuff absolutely has
really
to be
counts.
Yeah, where it has to be dead on.
Yeah, meeting up to that front porch, like that project you're talking about, versus a seat wall on the end of someone's patio that doesn't have a fixed point that you're working against. You have a lot of wiggle room there to do what you need to do. So
yeah, and you do need to let the homeowners know that if you're talking about a seat wall and they're losing 1/4 inch each block, that they're not. So it needed to be exactly 16 feet, so otherwise you're going to have some weird cuts on the end, so it's just more stuff with contracts, and communication.
Yeah. And this style of pavers too, I guess, if they want a 20 by 10 patio, let's say, and that by doing that exactly with whatever border paver and field paver they chosen, that if you just went out 6 extra inches, then you wouldn't have these weird cuts in the pavers, like plus or minus a few inches, that it's not going to be
that
exactly like you take a tape measure and boom,
and you should let your homeowner know that, and that we're going to try and move it in or out to the bond line. And you want to kind of, when you're digging with those those open ends, you want to just dig a little bit more. Like you technically need, if you're doing a patio, you need, if you're doing 6 inches of base, you need to have 6 inches past the edge of your edge restraint. So it's 9 inches. So you have to over dig by 9 inches. A lot of people don't realize it's that far, but it is.
Check SCPI.
Yeah. So you have to dig 9 inches, dig another 3 inches or so. So that way you have an extra 3 inches of play to move that bond line in or out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really going to cost you a whole lot for pavers. You should have a few extra ordered on site anyway, just because you're going to lose them anyway for cuts and chips and whatever.
Especially if there's going to be a curve and you have it tentatively laid out, but then when the homeowner sees it and you just overlay your pavers, they're out there helping you to
when it comes to
lay
curves.
it out.
When it comes to curves, I would, instead of digging an extra 3 inches, I would dig an extra 12 inches, because it just, having that wiggle room to move it in or out, it just, and that way they can pick how they want the curves. That's a good point. We'll bring them out, and before we'll have it marked and kind of get it approved, because it's really doesn't matter to us if we move it in or out. They're the ones that have to live with it. They're the ones that are spending thousands of dollars.
Pavers are already there. The base is already there.
Yeah, we've already prepared it. Like, we can move it out to here if you want, and sometimes they say, no, I just want it to be, I want it to be smaller, and that's fine too. And just put your topsoil right back up over top of it, and no one will ever know. So, that's you have to pay attention to all that stuff. So, and
then in terms of what manufacturers there are, you take a look at what vendors you want to use. Now, you might be in a remote area where you have less options or only one option. For us, we have an abundance of different vendors to choose from. So when we're looking at vendors in relation to our projects, we used to go and pick the vendor that was closest to the project. And we thought, okay, that's how we divide it up equally or evenly, or the most fair way to do it. And then we found that we really didn't have a good relationship with any of them. Not that we were on bad terms.
We had a lot of good relationships.
We had a lot of good relationships.
We didn't have a great one with any of them.
We didn't have any depth to those relationships. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And so we sat down and said, okay, who do we really think is the best fit for us? And we picked one vendor. And I mean, most vendors, they're willing to travel a couple 100 miles to deliver the block or the pavers. They don't care. It's just extra freight charge. So we picked one, and they deliver to anywhere we go. And that's where we get all our block and our pavers. And then we just get the aggregates from whoever's closest, or find a quarry and save a few bucks that way.
And the number one reason why we picked them, we picked them for a number of reasons. It seemed like they were just a good fit personality-wise. Mm-hmm. We've had some sketchy vendors, and it's like you have to babysit them, and
they just didn't have things available too.
They didn't have things available.
Waiting.
But you had to babysit them, and so we've run into a lot of problems where you put in an order and say, well, hopefully it's going to show up. He said it's going to show up on Tuesday, so we'll see.
Or hopefully it's not the wrong material.
Yeah, it's we've had some rough stuff with that, but for us, they return stuff, and we used to deal with places that they didn't want to return stuff. So what would end up happening is we would have just pallets of just mixed stuff that we would eventually try to unload on somebody. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to, what we end up doing is trying to sell a patio or a driveway in one instance, where it's like, okay, we have enough to do this, but you're going to have this color, and you're going to have to do this design, mm-hmm. To get to be able to use this.
And
then we're babysitting all these pavers and block, and it's like now we need a machine here. It like we're working out of our house. We don't need a machine to just sit here for a few times a year. It's
Yeah.
we had so much effort into organizing the inventory. It's a small amount, and it was a huge hassle.
Yeah.
And they take stuff back, and to me, that's, if you're a small company, like, that is huge. If you can find someone to take stuff back, now they're not the cheapest. I can get way cheaper price, but that to me is less critical than taking stuff back, because
But
I
the
don't
savings we have because we're only buying what we need.
exactly.
I mean, we over order to have it on site,
Yeah.
and then they willingly take it back. It's not just like, yeah, well, if you okay, maybe we'll take it.
Yeah.
They tell you,
Yeah.
just get this, and then we'll take whatever you don't use.
Yeah.
So that has saved us more than getting a cheap price on, or trying to get the cheapest price on block.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you said probably thousands a year. Just
Yeah. And just customer service is, if we had a bad batch of block, they came and switched it out within a few hours.
Yeah.
And, like, didn't charge us for another delivery or whatever. They're just like, no, just don't worry about it. And
yeah,
so it's that's really big. So it's tough to find someone like that, but once you do, like, I drive past probably 4 or 5 other vendors to get to their place.
Yeah.
I go out of my way. It's from here. It's 35 minutes. Sometimes with traffic, it's 45 minutes. So I'll drive an hour and a half round trip.
Yeah.
When I could just go.
It's worth it.
I could go about 10 minutes and get the same stuff. It just, so that stuff matters. Just how you're treated, and you really have to. You don't want people holding up your job, and we've had a lot of problems, and it's
Like you said, you don't want to have to babysit them.
that's it.
We need them to be able to do their job so we can do ours.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, so it's definitely a two-way street. We pay our bills on time and everything, so that's important too. Because you can't be asking for favors.
demanding.
Yeah, and just like, hey, I need this
Where
on Tuesday.
is your check?
But yeah,
Yeah,
and
or
you
my
still owe them for several months. So it just that matters too. You want to have good standing with them, pay on time or early. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And then it just makes things work so much more easily.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else? That's it?
That's it. Done.
Alrighty. See you on the next one.
Okay, 28.